Hello, my name is Disbeth Hakis, and for this week we were asked to have or read a reading entitled "Formulation of National Trade Policies." So mainly this reading talked about what characteristics or like what policies or where like what literally makes this what makes a formulation of national trade policies, I guess. So there's like a few different things that make this possible for us. So that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about. For starters, it mentioned the trade types that are involved in this procedure, which are two. Well, there's only two, which could be the free trade or the fair trade. The difference between the free trade and the fair trade is that one, the free trade has minimal influence from the government, meaning that the government pretty much has no saying, or I mean, it has saying, just not as much as it would in the fair trade. Because in the fair trade, it's an active intervention from the government, meaning it's pretty much managed by them. Another important aspect was that there's four industry level arguments that are important, which I'm going to mention out are the national defense argument, the infant industry argument, maintenance of existing jobs, and the strategic trade theory. Those would be the four industry level arguments that exist within this formulation of national trade policies. Now, national trade policies there's three main ones, which were divided in between the economic development programs. That's the first one. We have industrial policies. That would be the second one. And we also have public choice of analysis. So those three would pretty much be what creates this national trade policies. Not the actual formulation, just the actual national trade policies. That's the requirement. We also have barriers to international trade, which we might have seen somewhere previously in our career, or were introduced to us. I remember reading about this stuff. So it's the tariffs, it's the quantitative restrictions, and then we have other non-tariff barriers. So what this means is pretty much how can I explain? The barriers are pretty much like what you have to have, or like what needs to be done for this international trade to even exist. So for example, the tariffs is just pretty much it's a tax that it's placed on an imported or exported good involved in international trade. And this could be the ad valorem, the specific, or the compound. You also have the quantitative restrictions, which is just a trade barrier that imposes a numerical limit on the quality of a good that may be imported or exported, which means like the pricing of it in itself, like the quotas, the numerical export controls, the embargoes, and the voluntary export restraints. And then you have the non-tariff barriers, which are just government laws, regulations, policies, or procedures that impede international trade. So this could be the product testing, currency controls, regulatory controls, investment controls, just everything that has to be done for it to be lawful in a certain nation or in a certain state. So that's more like what the government requires of you, and the other two is more of like what you have to pay the government or what they're requiring from you economically. And last but not least, another important trade in this reading was the unfair trade practices. What does this mainly control? It's the International Trade Administration. There's two types, which is the government subsides and the unfair pricing practices. There's also anti-dumping regulations and Super 301, which is just mainly what the unfair trade practices controls. The objective of its laws is mainly to promote global efficiency. It ensures that the trade occurs on the basis of comparative advantage and to protect the consumers from predatory behavior. So pretty much to make sure that it's legal and that it's something done correctly, not just something unlawful or like it says here, for somebody to like be the predator of yourself, or get cheated on. So that's pretty much what it does for you in the unfair trade practices. So that was like the most important stuff that we saw in this reading, or that I consider mostly important. That would be all for my part. Hope you guys have an excellent day.